Hello and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a good day. A few months ago I did a video recommending 5 games on the Steam Deck, and that video did quite well for me, and I always wanted to make another one of those, but it's just taken me a while to play some games on the Steam Deck, get through the good ones, filter out the bad ones. But I'm back with 5 more recommendations for games that I think you should pick up on the Steam Deck. So in this episode we're going to start with a game that needs no introduction really, and that is Grand Theft Auto 5. I was really surprised at how well the Steam Deck actually runs GTA 5, but then I always forget that it was originally a Xbox 360 and PS3 game, which then was ported to Xbox One, PS4, and now eventually PS5 and Xbox Series X. It didn't start on any of those more powerful consoles, it started on the 360 and the PS3, so it makes perfect sense that it runs pretty well on the Steam Deck. This truly is a giant open world with so many activities. Everybody knows GTA 5 by now. There's just so much to do, and online means that there's even more to do. It's kind of the perfect game if you just want something that you can sink hours and hours and hours into, either going through the story and playing proper missions, or just messing about, driving around and causing as much trouble as you can. Now, like I said, because it is a bit of an older game, it does run pretty well on the Steam Deck. You can run it at 60 FPS and that's absolutely fine, or what I tend to do is I tend to limit it to 40, and the reason for that is just to get a bit more battery life, and also the fans don't go quite as crazy if you're trying to play at 40 FPS. And when it comes to battery life, you can kind of expect around 3 hours. Now, one thing to be aware of is the Rockstar launcher can be pretty annoying the first time that you play the game. Once you get it running once, then it seems to work fine after that. I've not had any troubles again, but logging into the Rockstar launcher for the first time was a bit of a pain. If I remember rightly, I may have had to run it in desktop mode just to get the launcher to work right, especially with the keyboard. But yeah, once I got it running the first time, I've never had to input any more information again, and it runs just fine after that. Just something to be aware of. And if you need any more convincing, one of the reasons why I think this game is kind of perfect on the Steam Deck is the sleep mode on the Steam Deck. I really like the sleep functionality anyway, but it works really well with Grand Theft Auto 5. And the reason that I think it works really well is that if you are somebody who doesn't always have a lot of time to play and you play in short bursts, GTA 5's mission structure can be just a little bit annoying. If you have to stop partway through a mission, it doesn't often save your progress. You have to start again from the beginning, and also loading up the game can take quite a long time if you have to load it all the way from scratch. But with the Steam Deck, both of those complaints are gone. You just put it to sleep, continue the mission where you left off with no loading times at all. So I think it works really well, and that is my first recommendation for this video. So the second game is in a bit of a different direction, and it is Dishonored by Arcane Studios. And yes, I did go back and have another look at this after hearing about what happened with Redfall. This game is also older, but I think it holds up really well in terms of gameplay. You play as Corvo. You're involved in a plot to overthrow the Queen, but in a bad way. You get framed, and then you sort of have to murder your way to the bottom of it for the rest of the game to try and find out what exactly happened, who it is that's responsible, and like I said, lots of just inventive ways to dispatch your enemies. I still think this game is a lot of fun. I did play it when it first came out, and I've enjoyed going back and having another look, especially on the Steam Deck, on that handheld device. It just adds to it, and it means you don't notice the older graphics so much. Speaking of graphics, even though they are older, you can run the game at max graphics, and you can also get 60 FPS at max graphics. And even with those settings sort of dialed up as much as you can, you still get a good battery life. You can kind of expect somewhere around the 3, maybe the 3.5 hour mark if you're lucky, and if you're sort of in a place where not too much is going on. So if you're after a stealth game and one with some really interesting mechanics, different powers that are really fun, lots of different ways to solve the puzzle that is assassination, then this one could be for you. Okay, so game number 3 in this list is another big open world, similar to GTA, but very different setting to GTA, because this is Assassin's Creed Origins. So I have talked about this one, I've done a whole video on it. I really think it works really well, and so I wanted to include it in this video as a proper recommendation, because I think it is a good one to play on the Steam Deck. It does run pretty well. The games that I've talked about so far are much older than Assassin's Creed Origins. It's a newer game, but it still runs pretty well. 60 FPS is probably too ambitious. I could never really get 60 FPS running smoothly, but you can definitely get 30 to 40 FPS depending on what kind of settings you want to dial up or down. 30 to 40 FPS is fine. And while I don't usually play at 30 FPS, I did get used to it pretty quickly. And especially with the smaller screen of the Steam Deck, it makes that difference between 30 and 40 or 30 and 60 harder to notice. This is a very, very big game to sink your teeth in, but it does often go on sale on Steam with the DLC alongside that, so you can usually snap up quite a lot of gameplay there for not too much money. Ubisoft does sales all the time, and I think it's one of those really where, if you're interested, just stick it on your wish list for a while in Steam, and it won't be too long before you get a notification from Steam saying that it's gone on sale, and it's usually a pretty hefty sale as well. It is a big game full of lots of side quests, and side quests aren't always my thing, especially when they're kind of filler content, but what I did find with this game is that I enjoyed doing those side quests while I was sat on the sofa playing handheld, doing something else at the same time, like watching telly or just chatting to people, and it kind of helps you to get through those side missions where normally you might kind of bounce off them and then drop the game for good. This can sort of help you progress in a slightly different way to usual. Two things that I think you should be aware of if you do want to pick this up is that the first one, the text can be a little bit small. It's not too bad, but it can be a little bit small if you struggle with that kind of thing. And then secondly, once you get the game running, I would recommend running it in desktop mode so that you can then disable the Ubisoft launcher's overlay in-game, because it doesn't seem to have it for everybody, but I noticed that for me anyway, it caused a bit of a RAM leak and the game would end up crashing after a while. But disabling the in-game overlay did fix that, so just something to be aware of. Finally, it is possible to get this running on the TV. With a little bit of tweaking, you can get it running at 1080p on a telly, usually about 30 FPS, and I was surprised by that, but it runs really well. So don't think that just because it's a more modern game you would struggle to get it to run on the TV, because it does seem to work fine. And then you have the option to play in whichever way that you want. Next game now, and this is a roguelike that doesn't need any introductions, and that is Hades. Would it be wrong of me to say that this is possibly the most popular roguelike of all time at this point? I don't have any stats to back that up, but it certainly feels like Hades is the one that everybody knows and everybody talks about. This game seems to have done everything right to capture the heart of gamers in general. It has great combat, it has great graphics, the gameplay is really interesting, the story is really interesting, the voice acting I think is really good as well. There's a reason that it is as popular as it is, and it fits really well I think on the Steam Deck. Because of that art style, it's not too demanding and it runs really, really well on the Steam Deck. You can hit 60 FPS pretty easily, and then because the combat is so fluid, playing the combat at 60 FPS feels really, really good. It's really fun to do. One of the things that I don't always like about roguelikes is the fact that the better you get at it, the longer each run can take, just because you're progressing further each time, and so you might not have time to always do a full run, when the runs are getting up to sort of like 45 minutes an hour. But the Steam Deck helps with this because you can just put the game to sleep and then come back to that run whenever you want, so you don't have to make sure that you've budgeted enough time in your day all in one go anyway in order to get through the next run. But of course, on the other hand, having the Steam Deck means that you might accidentally end up playing Hades in bed, and then just that one more run, the kind of feeling turns into, oh no, it's 3 o'clock, I should really get some sleep now. Just watch out for that one. Hades is really fun though. If you haven't tried it, I do recommend it. It's not too expensive and there is plenty to like in that game. So there we go, Hades is game number 4 on the list. And so we've come to the last game in the video, and that is Portal 2. Everybody should play Portal 2, I think. If you've not played it and you have any interest at all in puzzle games, but also very funny puzzle games, because Portal 2 is very funny. I really do like the humor, and handheld is a great way to do that.
Okay, alright, so I've got an idea, but it is bloody dangerous. Here we go. Ah! Oh, for God's... They told me that if I ever turned this flashlight on, I would die. They told me that about everything. I mean, I don't even know why they bothered giving me this stuff if they didn't want me to use it. It's pointless.
This is also a bit of an older game, but I think it still looks very good. And, condensed down onto the smaller screen, you don't even notice that it's an older game at all, really. It runs very well, 60 FPS absolutely fine, and it has a very long battery life, much longer than I've noticed in most other games, but I guess it's not really a surprise because the game was made by Valve, who make the Steam Deck, so it makes perfect sense that it runs really well on their own hardware. If you're just playing single player, then this is quite a short game, only really 2 or 3 hours long, but then at the same time it's a good short game if you're sort of one of those gamers that plays a lot of big games and then you just want something small to play in between before you move on to the next sort of bigger open world game. It's really good for that, a bit of a palate cleanser I guess. And if you know somebody else who has a Steam Deck or just an old PC, there is a separate multiplayer story that you can go through as well, and that's really good as well. It's good fun, and the puzzles are different, so you don't need to worry about repeating the same thing again. I think Sleep Resume is pretty good for this one as well, because if you really don't have a lot of time, you can even just jump back in to do 1 or 2 puzzles and then jump back out again, and it works pretty well like that. Most games would sort of start to feel a bit broken up, I think, if you just played in 10 or 15 minute chunks, but I think this game would work very well in 10 or 15 minute chunks, like I said, just doing a couple of puzzles at a time. So there we go then, Portal 2, one of the all-time most beloved games, and if you've not played it, I would definitely recommend picking it up, and it's good fun on the Steam Deck. So there we go then, those were 5 more recommendations on the Steam Deck. These are games I think are really fun or really particularly suited to the Steam Deck. If you'd like some more recommendations, I do have that previous video I mentioned that you can check out by clicking up here, and I hope to do some more recommendations down the line. It just takes me a little bit of time to get through some games. What have you guys been playing? Let me know if there are any games that you think I should take a look at and maybe include in a future video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.